All right, orange wine. What is it? Martin, what's your orange wine definition?
It's a white grape made in the style of a red wine.
No. I only gave him one job.
It's a white wine made in the style of a red.
It's a white wine made in a style of a red wine. And that's it. Just kidding. I'm going to break that down for you because it's actually it's not really complicated, but
There's some moving parts.
there's lots of moving parts. Okay. White wine made in the style of red wine. First, let's talk about how wine is made. You got to start from the beginning to understand what exactly orange wine is. So we'll start with red wine. When you make red wine, what you do is you take red grapes, you press them or squash them so that then you have this basically like a grape stew, or technically it's called must. And then if you think about it, what you want to happen is you want the pigment and the tannin, but especially that pigment that is in the skins of the grapes to basically be, you want the juice to soak that up because you want the wine to turn red, right? And the juice inside, if you take a grape and you kind of squeeze the pulp out of it, you'll notice that, I'm sure all of you have had a grape before, but the inside of a grape is not colored, right? There's no pigment in it. It's just clear, translucent juice. So in red wine, you want the pigment is only in those skins. So you want the juice to pick up that pigment. So basically what you're doing is you're letting that grape stew or that must, you're letting it steep kind of like a tea so that it sits there and the juice picks up all that tannin and pigment that's in the skins and also the seeds and stems sometimes of the grapes. And this is a process called maceration. But when you make white wine, it's a little bit different. You don't want that maceration. There's really no point in that maceration because you don't want that pigment, whatever little tiny bits of pigment that there is in that greenish, skin of the grapes to be imparted to the juice. So white wine, usually the style of white wine is something very fresh and clean, and crisp. You don't want that texture and tannin like you do with the red wine or color. And so when you make white wine, you will press the grapes just like you would for red wine, but then instead of letting it macerate like a grape stew, you remove the skins and the seeds and the stems right away so that all you have is just pure juice, and then you ferment it. So it's this crystal clear, clean white wine at the end of the day. Okay, let's say you want to get crazy. You take the white grapes, you mash them up, and then instead of getting rid of the skins and the seeds right away, you leave them in there to macerate, just as if you were making a red wine. Then what happens? Well, now you get this really uniquely flavored white wine that has kind of these aromas that are more usual to a white wine, but with a little bit of that pigment that's coming from the white grapes are not white, they're green or yellowish. So there's a tiny bit of pigment there, but then you also have the tannin that's in those skins and in the seeds of the grape. And so that white wine picks up this really unexpected mouthfeel and a really interesting flavor profile for a white wine. And this is called an orange wine. And that's when you have a white wine that's made in the style of a red wine, just as Martin clarified.
Yeah, that's what I said.